Hello, this is Randy Wooden, and this is the Wooden Desk. I'm so glad that you joined me today. Encourage you to pull up a chair to the desk, and hopefully we can communicate something that is going to impact you as well as give you some tools for leadership and what you may be doing in your life today. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that I believe is a critical in every person's life as well as leaders' lives, and that is to ask you a question: is what's most important to you? Every one of us has things that are important to us, but sometimes I think sometimes we just lose the grasp because there's so many things going on to say, what is the most important thing? I think this comes with a word that is a very familiar word in leadership and life, and that's priorities. Knowing what your priorities are, knowing what the most important thing is. When I begin to define this thing of priorities, it's just simply what's first, what should be first. I think there's a lot of things we do that are not necessarily the first thing or the most important things. On the spiritual side, I would just simply tell you that we have to know that Christ is first. One of the life scriptures that I go by is Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things shall be added. I really believe we should live by that. But on the leadership side, I think there comes times when we forget what is most important. I've learned as a leader that, when you begin to, do leadership, that you understand that activity doesn't necessarily, define accomplishment. And a lot of times we're busy doing a lot of activity and we're not working, as I call, smarter, but we're just working harder. And I think there comes a time, especially in my age, getting older, that I have to realize I better work smarter because my body or my mental capacity may not be able to handle where I'm going. So I think this is important for every one of us. And I believe leaders never grow to the point that they no longer need to prioritize. And not only that, but I believe it's something that a good leader continues to do as he's leading a group of people, whether it's just a few or it's many, is to know that he has got his priorities involved in every day in his time management, and not only in his time management, but ultimately where he knows his purpose is centered around. One of the challenges a lot of leaders have is, how do I get to the place that I know what my priorities are? I use a book many a times of leaders, and I've used it over the years several different times, and it's called The On Purpose Person by Kevin McCarty, who was a part of the Promise Keepers. And what I realized in this book is it challenges you to look at several avenues, everything from your spiritual to your physical to your emotional to your family, even getting down to your recreation and financial life. And it begins to challenge what are all the different things that you think about as being important. It makes you challenge them on, basically the college basketball tournament. Basically, you have the brackets where you begin to list all the things that are important. And then you begin to narrow them down and say, okay, but out of those 10 things, what is the one or two things that are the primary purposes in your life, is a way of honing down to what is the most important thing. I know, being in a pastoral ministry and other leadership positions, that at times you're doing a whole lot of things, and sometimes you have to. And I understand that, especially when you're in a smaller leadership venue. At times it's very difficult that you would just You sometimes have to do everything because you just don't have the resources or the people to do those things. I understand that. But still, even at that point, if you're not careful, you will be giving yourself to things that are not going to bring about production and are not going to bear fruit. And that's not what you want. And most of us, if we're doing something, we want it to grow. We want ourselves to grow. So one of the first ways of growing ourselves is to ask the question, even in our personal lives, is what's most important in my life? I don't know how many times I've given somebody a couple nights and said, I'm going to pay for you a couple nights. Go somewhere and get alone. Get alone with God. Don't take your cell phones. Get rid of all the communications and just get quiet. I think that's always hard for a lot of people because we're in so much noise and there is so much static at times. Our mind and our ability to slow down is it's just very difficult. but sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days just to get in a quiet place. And I call these the mini retreats. And I just want to say, if I had somebody and you were sitting across the desk right now, I'd probably be asking you those questions. What's most important? And if you can't tell me, why can't you tell me? You know, so many times it's easy just to be doing what I call leadership things that people have put before us. I call that line of sight leadership. We do whatever's in front of us, and we got to fix it, or we got to do this. And the challenge sometimes is just to get busy doing all of those things and not realize that that this is not going to bear the fruit that it needs to bear. So sometimes it's taking some time away, getting quiet, getting a pad of paper and a legal pad, and just begin to write down what, maybe just getting your mind empty. Because sometimes we can't get to a place of really analyzing just what is most important because we're just busy doing a bunch of stuff. I've been there. But I know that the turning points in my life have been when I've taken a mini retreat, or I used to take a week sabbatical always, and I would just go to the woods and I would camp out in a place. And during that time, I didn't talk to anybody. I just simply prayed, brought my Bible. I tried to listen to God, and I probably had some of the greatest encounters and insights of not only hearing from God, but just beginning again to analyze what is the most important thing. So I believe when we say what is the most important thing, I think it has to come under the category, first of all, of our spiritual lives. Our devotional life is the most important thing. Time with God is the most important thing. And a lot of times, quote unquote, we say things like that, but a lot of times we're not practicing it. And as a result, what's happening is everything that we're doing is not flowing out of the most important place. And yet I realized this. In younger years, I was just so busy. I got to do this. And there were days I would miss praying. I would miss time in the Word. And when I was in the Word, it was to prepare for a message or to get ready for some kind of speaking engagement. And I realized that, especially after years of doing ministry, just like some of you're saying, yeah, boy, that is so true. But we cannot sacrifice some of the things that are most important. So I think that's one of the questions we have to have. What is non-negotiable when it comes to being important? What I realize is talking about this, first of all, is the greatest secret to living an effective, I believe, life in the earth is understanding the power and the principles of priority and knowing what is important. That just simply means that we know what we have focus upon. We know how easy it is to lose focus in things that are going on. And yet our life is the sum total of all the decisions we make every day. Decision making is something that you do. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you're making decisions on things that are not even important. When not only that, somebody else could be making the decision while you're working on the most important things. But yet those decisions are usually linked to what we deem to be important. How are you using each day? Ultimately defines your life. And yet life is designed by simple and not complicated. And one of the keys to simplifying your life is to know what's important. I don't know how many people I've talked to say, man, things are just so stressed and I'm just so overwhelmed with what I'm doing in leadership. And I'm just like, hey, slow down a little bit. And it's not to say that I'm not going to sit here and say I have all those answers, because some of you may be going to say, hey, I know you. Yes, I'm high intense. I'm a serious individual and I'm a hard worker. But one of the things I've learned is if I take pace out of my life and peace out of my life and I am just all in, going, what happens is I'm just doing a whole lot of things. And some of the things that I'm doing, it's not to say they're not good things, but they're not the most important things. So my prayer is that you will begin to understand the importance of understanding how important it is to define those things. And the only way you can do that is usually to get by yourself and get some of the noise out of your head and write those things down. See, what I've always said is the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but it's a life without purpose, lived with the wrong priorities. I mean, can you imagine live your life and you're just doing all kinds of things and you're even defining your success upon some things that are not even what God has deemed important for you to do. Usually, yes, what is important is going to flow not only out of the will of God in our lives, but it is also going to flow out of a place of your giftedness and where brings the greatest passion, because when you're doing things in your giftedness, what happens is there's passion that happens. And when you're doing the most important things, there's a greater fulfillment that comes, not only in your personal fulfillment, but we believe that it ultimately fulfills the heart of God. And that's ultimately what it's all about in leadership, whether we are running a ministry, whether we're running a business, whether we're just trying to run our own families. And sometimes we're just running around, but we're not running things in a way that is consistent with what I call our priorities and what is important. See, the greatest mistake in life is to be busy but not effective. I've been there. I thought, man, this has been a busy day. And the sad fact is sometimes I had this warped sense of satisfaction just because I was busy all day. But really, I was busy doing things that may have been somebody else's calling or somebody else's job. And sometimes I had to slow down. See, I believe success in life is measured by our effectiveness and how we use our time. Time is a true measure, without a doubt. It is the fact of life, and it is the currency of life, so to speak, of how you spend your time that is going to determine not only your life, but how you live your life and your effectiveness in that life. So as I've kind of said an introduction right now for this lesson, in this first episode, I just want to tell you, define what is important. And as you define what is important, you will begin to see not only maybe a fresh revelation of redefining your schedule, redefining your the purposes and what you're doing daily. And I really believe that this is going to help. And I think we need to do this with ourselves. We need to do this with the key team members that are around us, to sometimes just get a piece of paper out and put it on the wall and begin to write, what is the most important thing that we're doing? Now, this has to start personally, yes. Then it has to start with those that are closest. I'm going to define that in the next section, in the next episode, as I talk about this. But I pray this has been a blessing to you. Again, I ask you, what is most important to your life? God bless you and have a great day.